Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So before we start with the session, can you all please give me a quick information if you all can see my screen and hear me loud and clear as well? Great. Thank you for the confirmation, everyone. So my name is Neeraj Kedia, and I have been working in this corporate industry for more than 14 years now. Yeah, I have 14 years of IT experience working as a chief solutions architect for different solutions. And since last 5 years, I've been working as a corporate trader in different cloud-based technologies. So without ado, let's get started. So first thing first, we are going to have a discussion on the introduction to Java, when we are going to discuss on the JDBC fundamentals. Then we are going to see how we can create the application, how we can, what are different types of drivers available under JDBC. And then we are going to set up the JDBC connection. And then we are going to see the statements that are going to be available for JDBC. So this is what we are going to set up as a part of our discussion today. Now, let's get started. So if you talk about Java, so Java is what? Java has been one of the core languages which is powering almost every device globally. So every device, more or less in one way or the other, they are using components of Java. So almost every application, every device, they are running on Java in one way or the other. And Java has been used in different use cases. So it is being used in web and enterprise applications for designing the client server architecture, for the next level programming as well, and for creating multiple servlets, including the web APIs, the JSP, JDBC as in the connector languages only. Now, if we talk about the J2EE and JDBC, then these are basically different editions of Java. So Java 2 standard, or we can call this one as J2EE. So these are used for developing the desktop-based applications from the core, or we can say the base APIs. And they are helpful for clients and standalone applications as well. Whereas if we talk about the Java 2 Enterprise Edition, so basically they are used for running the servers, including the website that we create multiple Java server web pages here. So again, they are basically used for creating that. And we will be working on whenever we are going to work with web and application servers like Apache Tomcat, Glassfish, then we have to understand the communication over HTTP protocol. But again, in core Java, this is not going to be possible. So again, as a part of the Java-based technologies. And then same way here we have for micro edition, where it simply runs on, or we can say microservices, where it simply runs on the micro devices as well, like we have cell phones, for example, games. Now, let's talk about our concept for JDBC. So what exactly JDBC is? So JDBC is basically a standard Java API for database independent connectivity between the Java language and with we can say different databases. So the application program interface lets us encode and access the request statements, and in that in a structured query language that we refer as SQL. So they are then passed to the program that manages the databases. It mainly involves opening a connection, creating a SQL database, executing SQL queries, and then arriving at the output. So we can use JDBC API to access tabular data stored in any relational database. So by the help of JDBC API, we can save, update, delete, and fetch data from the databases. And now it is similar to the open database connectivity, or we can say ODBC, provided by Microsoft. So here we mostly use two things here. We have the JDBC API, and then we have JDBC driver API. So JDBC API provides the application to JDBC manager connection, and the JDBC driver API supports the JDBC manager to driver connection there. So this is basically the architecture that we follow here. So it uses the driver manager and database specific drivers. For example, if we are using MySQL, then we are going to need MySQL driver. If we are using Oracle, then we will need Oracle driver, and so on. So the JDBC driver manager ensures that the correct driver is used to access each data source, and the driver manager is capable of supporting multiple concurrent drivers that you want to get connected to. All right, so next, in terms of the simple, we can say JDBC SQL based syntax here. And then first of all, we have create table, or we can say create database. So first thing first, before we start working on any database manipulation, we have to create a database first. And for creating a database, we have to simply run the SQL query as create database, and then we can define database name. Now, after database has been defined here, we have to drop the database as well. Dropping means we want to delete this. So here we can use drop database for dropping it. For creating multiple tables, or a single database can have multiple tables. So for creating all the tables, we are going to use the command as create table, where we are going to define what kind of table it is going to be, how many columns they are going to have, and plus if they are going to have the access to, for example, let's say if they are going to be how many columns and what kind of data type is going to be available for every column here. So this is what we are going to define here. And then afterwards, if we want to delete the table, then we have drop table name. And then for inserting data into these, we have the insert into table names and the values that you want to insert. So if we talk about the entire process of creating the JDBC application, first of all, we have to import the required packages. So we need to include the packages containing the JDBC classes needed for database programming. Now, most often we can use import Java SQL.asterisk, and that is going to import all the required packages. And then we have to register the driver and open connection, where we have to initiate a driver so that we can open a communication channel with the database. And then we have to execute a query where we can use a get connection method to create a connection object, which represents a physical connection with the database. And then we have extract data from the result set, where we can use run queries to manipulate the entire database here. And then towards the end, we can simply go ahead and clean the environment. That means we can explicitly close all the database resources versus relying on the JVM's garbage collection. So this is going to be the entire process being followed here. And there are multiple drivers available that we are going to work with. So first thing first, as a part of the setup, we are simply going to set up our database connection here. And this database connection is going to have multiple components. And then we are simply going to set up the connection, and then we can start performing queries on top of it accordingly. So let's see how we can structure. So here we are going to make use of the ID. So we already have an existing database available under the RDS service. So RDS is currently we're using AWS as a base platform, where we had deployed a MySQL based database instance, and currently it is being created. So in the meantime, let's create a simple project in Eclipse, and then we can see how exactly we can start working on creating a simple application which requires the JDBC connector API. So let's open up our workspace. Let's close these as we don't need them. Let's create a new simple base project here, a simple project on Java as JDBC example. Now, once we have configured this JDBC example here, now we are going to create a public class, and then in this class here, we are going to import all the required packages. And for that, we do need to have the jar files imported, because again, then only we will be able to work on including all the required SQL statements. So in our JDBC example, let's do one thing. Let's create a new class. Let's say here we can name the class as example. Now here we are going to import multiple packages from multiple components. So first of all, we can define import java.sql.asterisk, where we are going to import all the SQL packages. That means all the SQL related packages available from Java. So this is something that we have to include. So here we can simply go ahead and include all the JDBC APIs so that we would be able to go ahead and use it in our program here. So if you already have the Java files available with us, then we can simply right click on the project, and here we can click on build path, configure build path in case you want to add any external Java files. And in here we can click on add external jars. So in case we have the Java files already available, then we can go ahead and include that. So here we have to simply include the JDBC API jar file that we have the access to. And once we are done, so here we can simply go ahead and apply it, and the dependency is going to be So once it has been refreshed. All right. And after this, we also have to import other package as java.sql dot driver manager. And here we are going to first of all make use of the driver itself. So here we can use static, and here we can use the final string method for the JDBC underscore driver, where we can define the driver as from mysql dot JDBC dot driver as the main driver available here. So this has to be put under double quotes. And then we can define another static final string for the database underscore URL. So this is going to be the actual URL where we have been running JDBC, or you can say the main MySQL instance. So here we are going to make use of MySQL. So it has to be JDBC and then a colon MySQL colon, and this is going to be the path. So this is going to be the main path. So we have the endpoint available from our RDS based database running on AWS. So let's get the endpoint from here. So this is going to be the endpoint that we are going to enter here. If we are using a local database connection, then this will be localhost and your port, which is going to be 3306. 3306. All right, and if you have a specific database already available here, for example, suppose you already have a database by the name of employees, then we can define the database name as well. And then we are going to define the credentials for this database as in static final, where we are going to define the string for the user. So here we can define the string for user, which is going to be admin for now. We have defined the username as admin. And then same way here we can define static final string as the password. So we have defined password as a simple password here. And then afterwards we have to define the main public method. So here we define public static void main, which is going to be string. And then we are going to define the connection. So here we are going to define connection, and let's say we can name the connection as suppose connection itself for a given value as none, and then we can define statement as suppose statement itself, where we are going to define as null as well. All right, so now here we are going to register the JDBC driver. So here first of all under the try block we are going to define the class. So here define class for name, which is going to be the JDBC connector that we have the access to. For example, here we can register the driver here by the name of com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. So this driver has to be registered here. So this is going to be resolved once we have the required package. And then once we register the class, then we are going to set up, or we can say open up a connection. So here we can add a command. So what we are doing here we are registering a class. So here we have register a JDBC driver, and once we are done registering the driver here, we can go ahead and define register, or we can not register, we can say we have to open a connection. We have to open up a connection, and for that we are going to use system.out.println. First of all, a message as in connecting to database. This one should be displayed, and then after this we are going to define the connection, and here we are going to make use of driver manager dot get connection, where we are going to set the connection between the DB URL where we have already defined as DB URL, and then we are going to define the credentials in terms of the user and password. So here we can define the user and then the password here that we have already defined, user and password that is going to be used. And then once we are done here, we can simply execute the query, and for that we can again define system.out.println println, and suppose here we can define, suppose creating a statement or executing a query. We can print anything we want, and then we can define from statement that we have saved as stm itself, and from here we are going to define the save statement that we define. On a statement, we can simply define whatever statement we want to include. For example, here, first of all, we have defined connection dot create statement, and then we can define as a part of string SQL, where we can define SQL is the current query. For example, let's say we want to create a database. We can define create database. In case we already have a database available, then we can define select as well. That means in case we have the access to already a predefined database. Suppose here we want to run select ID, we have the first name, then we have the last name, then we have the age column, and that too from the employees table that is available inside this EMP database that we are trying to get connected to. So what we are doing here, we are simply setting up the connection, and then we are simply defining what exactly and how exactly we have to work upon this. So that's how we can define the condition, and whatever we want to exclude, we can go ahead and define. And again, once we are done, so basically we have to close the connection as well. So once we are done running any query we want, so now suppose let's say here even if we want to display the output, so here we can simply store in the values in whatever component we want, and then we can simply close the connection. So here whatever connection we have opened up, so for example we had defined the same result set. So let's say we save this as a part of suppose the result set, suppose rs, and here we define suppose statement dot execute query for the same SQL query that we had defined. So this SQL query is what we define is going to be executed here, and then we can simply go ahead and close the connection. So once we are done, we can simply define rs close, and then we can define the statement close once we don't need this. And after the statement has been closed, then we also have to close the connection that we have open as a part of cleaning up activity, and then we can simply close the cache block. So once we're done, so here we define the cache block, and then within cache we can define whatever exception is being recorded here. We can simply record them by using E, or we can say any error message, and then we can simply define e.print stack trace, and then we can simply add the values depending upon the requirement. So here we have to first of all open the connection, and then the same connection has to be closed as well. Then only we will be able to work on that accordingly. Thank you so much for joining everyone, and have a great day ahead. Take care. Bye bye.